Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to another Shamshir Sound video. My name is Ali Nadem, and in today's video we're going to go over 5 ways you can boost your lead sound in your drop, in your projects, and really make it cut through the mix, really saturate it and pump it to really make it more prominent in your project. And these techniques are all different from one another. There isn't one that is necessarily better than one. They all do different things, and we're going to explain all those nuances and all the differences between them. Now, before we jump into that, guys, make sure you smash that like button and make sure you guys are subscribed if you haven't already. So we have a basic lead idea I made for this tutorial. Let's play it back. Let's move this down. We're working with Camel Crusher first. We're going to explain that. So Camel Crusher is a free plugin. Fantastic plugin, and Camel Crusher can be used to really pump out your sound. And a lot of people love the British Clean preset, and let's go to the British Clean preset and let's just play it without. Okay, so that's really loud, of course, but you get the idea that Camel Crusher can really make your sound louder and pump through the mix. I'm not going to use such a harsh preset. I'm going to go to mine called Filter. Now the filter preset that I've made is just very transparent. The master is cranked all the way up, mix is all the way up. The cutoff is all the way up. It says 16 kilohertz, so it rolls it off around 16 kilohertz. So Camel Crusher could also benefit you if you want to tame some of that really high-end hiss. And at the same time, it actually sounds very pleasing to the ears, even though you'd think, well, it's losing some high-end data. So let's play it back with my preset. So I like leaving these on like this, no resonance, cut off all the way to the right, and I like working with the compressor and turning it up to pump my sound. So this way, the compressor and how it works, the compressor is very intelligent. It's a different type of compressor. It doesn't just compress a signal, it also has like an auto gain feature. So as you crank the amount up, it starts to increase the volume of your sound and make it louder and louder. So check this out. Okay, so turned off, on. So it does make that sound louder. It ends up being very transparent. But if you start introducing distortion, which you can, but be very careful because the distortion can really mangle your sound. And with anything, you can overdo it. But I really like the tube distortion. Sometimes adding like 1 or 2% can sometimes give it a really nice crispiness to it. We're going to turn off the delay on this synth and just turn up the tube distortion. It really makes it a bit more aggressive. It's louder. It pumps a bit more. So Camel Crusher, very simple plugin, and I recommend to you guys all to experiment with it and try it out. Let's move on to the next plugin.
A perfect sausage.
Sausage Fattener is a great plugin. Very simple. There's just 3 knobs, a gain knob, color, and we have the fatness. The gain, I always recommend working with leave it at 0, and as you start to pump it, you might want to back off the gain to really match the existing signal, unless you want it to get louder. But there are times where I just want to give a bit of fatness and then I back this off like 0.5 or 1 minus 1. We're going to leave this at 0, but pay attention to the sound, what happens as we crank up the fatness. I'm going to go extreme just to show. So the fatness at 12%, color at 6, it's always going to depend on the signal coming in, right? There's no right or wrong way of using this, but Sausage Fattener can be used to fix a lot of presence and issues in your sound sometimes. It can really give it this quote-unquote fatness. It really saturates it. It's a sort of saturator and also adds a bit of EQ, a bit of color to the sound as well. So let's play it off, on. So the signal got louder, of course. It's also a hard limiter. So if you're concerned about your signal exceeding 0 dB, as well as Camel Crusher is also a hard limiter as well, then try out Sausage Fattener, try it on your drums, try it on different stuff. I've used it on literally anything. So Sausage Fattener is a good plugin. A lot of people hate on it. They don't know what they're talking about. You just have to use what sounds good. And if it sounds good, go ahead and use it. So Sausage Fattener can make your sound really pump. But again, just be careful and pay attention to your overall output signal. Because if we look at the signal here, so it kind of gives this a meat. It kind of gives it a little bit of beef. It kind of saturates that signal. You can give it a little bit of color. So if something is lacking a bit of maybe warmth, or you want to colorize it, then experiment with that. But usually I always go to the fatness knob first before I start introducing a bit of color. And I'm very conservative with this, as I am with this. I have a project I'm working on, and the lead has like 2% fatness and 1% color, or like 1% and 1. So less is more when you use some of these plugins. All right, so let's move on to Fabfilter Saturn. Fabfilter Saturn is a beautiful plugin. There's so much you can do with this, and I won't be able to cover everything, but I'm just gonna talk about some simple stuff. I really love the gentle saturation. So you have different types of modes here, and I really love the gentle saturation. You have clean tube, warm tube, and they give different characteristics to your sound, so try it out. You have a global mix percent here, so if you want to do maybe like a parallel type of mix, you could set it at 50%. But we're going to leave it at a hundo. And we have the output, input. We also have some other knobs here. Auto mute, I believe it's some sort of gate that can maybe end or turn off. Like if you have, you know, when you put on really weird distortion plugins and then you start to get that hiss or that hum, I believe it's for that. And then there's the high quality as well. It's a zero latency plugin, as is Camel Crusher and Sausage Fattener. But if you turn this on, it will bump it up to around, you see there, 0.1 ms. So I leave this off usually, but listen and see if you like it with or without. So essentially we have the drive, and what also changed the characteristic a lot too is the input and output. So let's crank up the input and output. So watch what happens when we do this. I'm going to turn on Fabfilter Saturn. Keep in mind, Saturn can change the characteristics very simply. I've watched Dropgun talk about how they just crank up the input and then they bring down the output, and it's driving it through that chain. It's driving it through that plugin. And the result is you can get a very driven signal just from doing that. So you can hear, this is without it. And now on. It gives it a bit of drive. Now, there's 3 other things in Saturn that can help colorize your sound. We can also go to this EQ, and it's a beautiful EQ. Presence adds a lot of air. We have the treble, the mid, and the bass. So check out what we'll do here. Now let's see what happens when we use the drive. So now let's play without. And now with. A lot more drive, a lot more juiciness, a lot more thickness to the sound. So the dynamics is very unique. The dynamics gives a sort of pump to your sound. So if you have a reverb on it, or a delay, or a tail, it'll make it that much more prominent if you have something that has weird dynamics in your sound. And what it'll do is it'll really pump that. And it's hard to explain. I'm going to turn on the delay so you can get a really good idea of what it's going to do. So check this out. Really made the delay pump out a lot more. It's really squashing the signal, and that can help you guys. So combine all those. First, I recommend start with gentle saturation, crank up the input, back down the output, see how you like that. Start adding some EQ, and then move on to the other portions as well. And you know, you can do a lot with Saturn that can't be done with the other plugins. So the second last plugin is the OTT. Now the OTT can do fabulous things, and usually with this one, I like using a small amount of it. I've used it on a master before. I've used it on so much. There's a lot of stuff that it can do, and you don't want to go too extreme. We're gonna leave this the way it is. Right, it totally manipulates the sound. The depth to me is kind of like the mix percent. The time is like the attack and release. We have an input and output gain. We have a high, mid, and low adjustment knob there. And we have the downwards and upwards. So OTT, it's an upwards and downwards compressor. What does that mean? It will compress a signal, and it can also bring out harmonics upwards into the signal, allowing not only to compress it, but to also bring out some harmonics to really kind of saturate the sound a bit more. So what I'll do here is I'll back down the time. I'll put it, maybe let's go 50%. You just gotta play it by ear. And I'm gonna introduce some depth. You can see it working in action there when it's going like minus, plus, and it's boosting but also compressing. So this is without it. And now with. So this one, again, boosting it a lot, but in a unique way because it's doing it different than how the other one's done. So you can still arrive to your destination a variety of ways. OTT can really help you guys out. It has a bit of latency. It's not a zero latency plugin, but it can really boost that signal and in a different way than the other ones. So I also really like this one too. Do not underestimate the Soundgoodizer. I know a lot of people are going to hate this plugin. Soundgoodizer is used so much by Jay Hardway, and you know, producers that are on the biggest labels do use this plugin. So don't underestimate it. What is Soundgoodizer? Soundgoodizer is kind of like a dumbed down version of Maximizer from Image Line. So multi-band, limiter, compressor, kind of mastering, mixing plugin. But this gives you just 4 different presets and the ability to just crank it up as much as you want. Now, with that being said, this is a warning. This will manipulate the signal of the stereo field. So the stereo field will get manipulated for better or for worse. So just keep that in mind if you want to not mess around with the stereo field. But I really like it, and let's see what it does. I like using it very conservatively, small amounts. So check this out. Just like that, we have a beefier signal. I really love A. I'm not a big fan of B or C, and maybe sometimes I've used D, but 99% of the time I'm using A. And I just listen, I crank it up to the point where I hear it, and then I'm happy with it. So let's do that again. I could have obviously left it a bit earlier because like it kind of kicks in like very around here. So I could have left it there, but you know, I want to pump this one a bit more for the purpose of this tutorial. Right, so now it's so much more pumped. Listen to it off. On. Now when we combine that with the reverb, sidechain, and the kick. And then we turn it off. So I really love the simplicity of this plugin because anybody can use it. It's so easy to use, and I love using it on like a bass or sometimes on a kick, and really gives it a lot more thump and juiciness and thickness to the sound. All right, guys, so that wraps it up for this video. If you guys enjoyed this, make sure to smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed for all my future videos, And I'm going to put a link to the FLP for this in the video description so that you guys can download it and experiment it and see the differences between each plugin yourselves. So with that being said, guys, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.